Hello, welcome to Creative You Knitting and Crocheting Podcast. It's been a while. And months actually, and there's some reasons for it that I'll get into later. My podcast really wasn't growing, and that bothered me and led me to do some soul searching, which I'll talk about it along the way. So I think I finished about 30 whips, about 30 unfinished things, which really were bothering me because they were started and they were put away. I have fibromyalgia and I've been in quite a slump, and I get a surge to start something and then it doesn't get finished, it gets put away. But I have been really loving crocheting lately. And I did a little hat out of a pattern in a book, and the number one word at a yarn shop is soft. People want something soft. So this was a soft yarn that I had in my stash, and it's actually more of a peach than a pink, but that's the way it's showing. And babies can have bigger heads than we think. That kind of led me to do a little designing of my own hat pattern. And I decided to do this little gathered stitch, like a clustered stitch. And I'm not sure if I'm finished here or not, so I don't know, do any of you watch this little podcast where this woman shows all of these pictures of baby sets? They are amazing. I don't understand the language, and I don't understand how she or a group have time to do all these, but it will be a dress and booties and a hat, and things have flowers and trims, and they're all different colors, and it's amazing. So then I decided to do this. The only thing is this yarn is nubby, and sometimes it gets little bumps, which it looks worse on camera than it actually does on film. Now I was wondering if I wanted to do some kind of a little ruffle. The one thing about this yarn, people don't really know what to do with it, but it is fun. So if you put your crochet hook in, it's a little hard to get a slip knot because of all the little bumps. But if you crochet in between the bumps or the nubs, you just crochet in between. It is very fun, and when you're finished, get this really nice little, very even on the one side and bumpy on the other side. And I'm thinking surely there has to be something, like suppose you did a little octopus and you did all these little nubs on the tentacles. Well, I was watching some news this morning and I heard about a boat. I'm not sure of the name of the boat. It was a big wide open boat with a sail, and they were eating lunch, getting ready to take that bite of vegetarian pizza, and bump, a huge bump. And he gets on the radio and says, "This is no joke. We bumped into a whale. We are sinking." So they all were saved, but wow. And it said there are up to 1,200 such episodes a year. This was a pattern that I'm not sure where I found it, but the little ridges that you see are usually if you go in the back of the stitch. And it looks like every other row. I probably did that. It was done with a fingering weight yarn. It's a thin yarn, and it feels nice. It feels stretchy. It's merino wool. Feels stretchy, and it's soft. And then there was a little edging, and it's actually one of my favorite hats for babies that I've done. So, back to this. I am a Christian, and that's one of the things that I've really been trying to find out about this podcast, where it's going. My husband and I do a yearly study through the Bible, and we have been going through Exodus. And one of the things that Moses was saying is go forward. God saying to the people, go forward. And I'm starting to study a little Hebrew. And Hebrew is an amazing language because you have a root word. Let's say for anger, you have a little root word. And then off to the side, you have a letter that's going to tell you what that anger is about. Is it because somebody cheated you? Is it because you're frustrated? And, it makes the English language pale in comparison because our word just says angry. Doesn't really say much else. So there was a word that the people were murmuring against God. They were murmuring, complaining. But what the word actually meant is when you get so involved in your earthly comforts not being taken care of, that it gets in the way of moving forward. And so they were stuck because of their murmuring. So sometimes I have yarns and I'm thinking I need to move forward. And somebody laughed at me once. Oh, you actually pray about your projects? I do, because we're to do all to the honor and glory of God. Whatever your hands find to do, do it, but do it to the honor and glory. And there was one lady that came into the shop that would do a scarf knitted, and then she would use this yarn for kind of like a ruffle that flared out at the bottom. It is nylon, but it could be a lot of fun, like the edging of a coaster or so forth. I have a bunch of coasters to show you the next time. There's no way that I could show you everything this podcast. So I think the last time I might have been showing knitted slippers. So this is an eyelash yarn and a variegated purple yarn together, and you basically are doing a rectangle and then sewing them together. But one thing I notice is the seam probably shouldn't have been done with both yarns. Even though I had a piece of both yarns sticking out, it made a ridge, even though I tried to be very careful and make it flat. So that would be uncomfortable on top of the foot. So I would have to turn the sock inside out and maybe put some kind of a decoration there, or just let the ridge. Oftentimes too with socks, I get a heel bump, and I don't like it because our heels don't have bumps. So it seems like that when you turn it inside out, it kind of makes that go away. But they're fun, and there is wool in the variegated yarn, so they should be warm, and I imagine they would be dust bumps on your floor. Remember when you were a child and you'd love to just slide on the floor, and your mom would say, you're going to get hurt? We had a small hallway in the house I grew up on that led to a bathroom, the basement door, and 2 bedrooms. And my sisters and I would fly back there in our stocking feet. So that was one thing that I got finished. Number 2 that I got finished, the hats. And I know plastic rattles and sounds funny. Ella Ray Cozy Soft was one of our kind of like bread and butter yarns at the shop. And unfortunately, like many yarns through COVID, got discontinued. And this is a color called Russian Buttercup. The gray is more like a gray green and the pink is darker, but one time I wanted to see what a Russian Buttercup was, and I looked it up, and what came up was this yarn. And I thought that was funny. So I started another hat, and I'm using a smaller hook than it calls for because I don't like hats that have a lot of spaces, because if it's cold out, you want the child to be warm. Let's see where it goes. Just trying to figure out some different patterns, and also trying to figure out where you don't have a space where you can tell that's where you joined it. And there's different tutorials on that. One is to do, well, we won't get into that, but there are different tutorials on that. This was another unfinished project with the same yarn that I did with a small hook, just to put over a bowl. And I do like the color pooling that happened, and I have been working on intentional color pooling. So you are trying to get the yarn to do it. So I think that's finished. Put my little bowl in that'll have a plant in it. This was something else that got started with a nylon type yarn that used to be out called Zen, I think, and a variegated yarn that I just couldn't think of anything to do with it. I'll find it and show you on the next podcast. And I decided to do just a little placemat for the middle of the table, and I followed the edging that was on one of the coasters, which I really like the front and the back of the edging, and I like it. It didn't turn out anything like the yarn, what the yarn looked like. One was a ribbon yarn and the other, I can't quite remember, but I like it. I like it. Fun fur and furry yarns. This is for the cat. It was just crocheted in a circle, and the cat likes it. That is an older project, but you can see the rim of the coaster is like the rim of the other piece. I think a set of coasters is a nice gift too. I had a project started. It was supposed to be a purse that you could felt. I mean, this thing was just getting way, way, way too big. I don't know if it will felt down this big, but even though I kept making sure it was joined, somehow it kept flipping. And I ripped it out several times, and I still came back with it being flipped. So I finally said, you know what? I was putting a lot of money into this. It was like a strand of silk garden and a strand of another merino yarn, and just decided this is going to be a cow. And so what? It's twisted. It will look cute, but enough's enough, you know. Sometimes you just blow the referee whistle and say, done. There was also a project I was doing that was the horseshoe fern cow. And it's been a while, but I think when I was knitting it with Ella Ray Cozy Alpaca, I think I thought, well, let's do a bunch of these in different yarns and show the customers. But I kept tearing it out because it just didn't look right on. It didn't lay right. It kind of flopped over, and I wasn't happy with it. And I kept taking it out and trying a different edging, and finally said, you know what? No, this is getting frog. And when I looked at the photos on Ravelry, they did look kind of floppy and not. There was one lady, I think, driving in a car that it looked okay, but the rest of them, I didn't think so. Frogging. Then I pull out another project, and it's the same pattern. And I'm like, oh. And then I pull out a Noro yarn, which just is much more of a orangey golden yarn that it shows on camera, but same pattern. And the pattern doesn't show well because it's a nubby yarn, has lots of flip, but that's going to be a frog. So not everything gets finished. I finished a dishcloth that had been sitting around, made of Debbie Bliss Echo cotton, which the selling point was that cotton takes gallons and gallons of water, is very expensive and hard on the environment. This is a sport weight yarn, and this is so light. I think it should really be a face cloth than a dishcloth. And it was done on a smaller needle, maybe a 4. And I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah, it took time, but just mindless knitting. It doesn't weigh much at all. Here's my dog underneath. You can probably hear him panting. There are some videos where I realize you can hear his collar, his tag, hitting the water dish as he's drinking. And this will be a felted purse that is ready for felting as soon as I finish another purse. Maybe I'll do one episode all on felting. So this is done with worsted weight wool, Ella Rae Classic, and a purple gray color, actually more gray. Isn't it funny how colors don't show up very well as the light hits them? Hopefully the next time you see this, it will be felted. It was fun, just around and around crocheting. Felted drawstring bag with needles. I saw a podcast where the podcaster did swatches of many, many different stitches of crochet, and then weighed her yarn to see which stitches ate up the most yarn. So the smaller the stitches, like single crochet, take up the most yarn. Okay, let's put that in there. We've been selling on Amazon and eBay, and you can get some deals. I will put our eBay seller ID down there, and on Amazon, basically just looking for a product. But I will kind of caution you that if you buy on Amazon, 58% of Amazon is actually small businesses. And when somebody returns something, it is a financial woe to the shop. It really is. And people, they don't realize that. This is another purse. I'm almost finished with the handle. Trying to kind of figure out how long to make the handle. And this will not be felted because this is a cotton blend yarn. It was a Louisa Harding yarn. It's really pretty. It had come out in all different colors with patterns for sweaters and different things. There's the bottom of the bag. And the yarn is here somewhere. Anise. I'm not sure where they got that name, like the licorice flavor. and it should have some good stretch, but not too much, which you wouldn't want a purse that hit the bottom, but the pattern actually called for it to be much smaller, and I kept thinking, that seems awfully small, like that seems too small. This is Julia, who came into the shop with her daughter from out of town, and her daughter wanted to make her a sweater. And there she is. She stopped in to show me her sweater, and I found out she's my neighbor, like right down the street. I was so happy to meet her. There's the Fair Isle design on the sweater. She did it with alpaca yarns. This is another customer. You can find these on Facebook that stopped in and said, yes, this is the sweater pattern that you helped me to pick out. You helped me pick out the yarn, and here I am. It's very feminine. Sorry, I have a lot of very feminine and dainty. And then this gal decided to return to crochet after years of not crocheting, and did this beautiful baby blanket for charity with a variegated, with a variegated pink yarn. Doesn't really show real good, but that's about as good as it gets. That was a set of coasters I did, different from the one I showed you. And this is a trick that I was showing a customer today. Her daughter is going to knit her a shawl called Killer Queen shawl, and you take 2 skeins of a solid or a semi-tonal worsted weight yarn and 1 skein of variegated. There's another blend, and there's another like a pastel blend with a dark purple, and you want to see if there's enough contrast. So what you do is you edit the photo. You go down here to the 3 hues of color, take it over there to the black and white, and you can see that there is a strong contrast in most of the yarn. If it all looks the same, you're probably not going to be happy. This is Pacific worsted weight, and I decided to do a pattern for a hat, and I wanted to just do something a little bit different, but I should have done it up here as well. So this is when you go in the back loop only and you get a little ridge. And now for the rim, what I'm going to do is so many rows of just slip stitches, which can get kind of monotonous, but it's a nice effect and it hugs your head nicely. So that will be my pattern. And let's see what else. I finished a crocheted cowl made out of a super bulky merino yarn, but it is lofty and lightweight, and it's a crochet pattern. As you can see, I've really been on a crochet binge where it looks like 2 double crochets, chain 2, and a single. And it's like a light gray and a light purplish, and it's not itchy at all, and you can wrap it once or wrap it twice. We haven't had a cold winter. We seem to have a lot of variation in weather. One day it's 60 and then the next day it's freezing. I also had a cowl that was unfinished out of a thick thin yarn, And that is the thick thin yarn. And it was done this way. But I wanted to add something. So I had a cotton, kind of like a matte, not a mercerized cotton yarn, and I put several rows on, and then I did an edging with a variegated yarn on both edges. Yeah, it's fun to do your own thing, and it's not that difficult. So that was another whip that was finished. I had I found the pattern. This was supposed to be a bag to hang on a walker. So an older person has a walker and they need a bag, but it just wasn't, I don't know, it just didn't seem to be working. So I made a placemat instead. This was with a yarn called nettle, because it's made with nettle, and it's not really stiff, but it has a nice solid feel to it, and I'm happy with it. I had several colors going, the gold, the remember red, blue, and yellow are the primary colors, and then a purplish brown. And this is done with I think one in front, one behind, maybe the alpine stitch in crochet. And I found a baby blanket upstairs that I was doing out of this stitch that needs to, so there's another whip finished. We also used to have a yarn in the shop that was very much like Trigato. Trigato was very much like Line Brand shawl in a ball, and I've shown this pattern before with the post stitches. I have one in a bright yellow, and you have the post stitches framing. Wow, it's a shame. This yarn is such a vibrant blue, and it's showing up not like a, there's the pattern. It is a fun pattern. I like it a lot. So I got this finished, and it's just joyful. It's just happiness doing this stitch. It's a nice, if you've never done post stitches, because there's your shell stitch, double crochet 2, chain 2, double crochet, and then you have, oh, the back doesn't look that bad either, really. So another thing finished. Ta-da! Some dishcloths finished. This is a tiny one. This is done with Mary Maxim Scrub It. But these, the Scrub It is rough. They're good for exfoliating your skin or for actually cleaning. And you can make little cleaning pads out of them. This was just the sugar and cream, I think. Of course, I had to put a little fancy row in there. I finished a little lammy hat for a baby out of a worsted weight cotton, Euro Yarns, Babe Self Cotton Worsted, which has all these puffs. And what else did I finish? I finished Drops, free pattern. This needs to be kind of blocked. You know, when you let something lay in a bag and you lose the momentum and you lose where you are, and even if you have the pattern marked, you find yourself ripping back, and that's not the right place, and I didn't do the right thing. That needs to be blocked, but I do have mistakes, but that's okay. I think it would be just nice I think it might be called Home is Where the Heart Is. There you go. And this is done with a kind of a stiff cotton glitter yarn called Perry and Night, I think. And I made a little hook for it. Another bag that I had started that again seemed way too short, way too short. This is a super bulky yarn called Iceland. So I'm not gonna know until it's felted how this is gonna look. Oh, someone came into the shop and they told me that they knitted a bag to be felted. The directions say to put the bag in a pillowcase, secure it shut, and put a piece of heavy jeans in the load. Well, she didn't put it in the pillowcase, and she had straps, and the straps got tangled up with the pocketbook, and it felted to itself, and it was a disaster. I felt sorry for her. I did. I really did. Not finished, but I definitely am doing some work on this scarf. Wow, again, this is a deep, like a peacock blue. And they don't tell you it's reversible, but I kind of like it. It's a yarn over knit two together, and you do it on different sides so you get this pattern. And I'm working on it every day, a little bit. I just wanted to show you a flashback to the 70s. Wow. What do you think? Oh, I was wondering what that is. That is her sleeves and her black gloves. I thought at first it was a pattern. Can you imagine doing a photo shoot and having to keep that position for how long? Wow. This is the back. There's one man. It's a shame because you can't tell the pattern of the man's sweater. And all of those patterns are in this little leaflet. Can you believe that? Just a little flash from the past. Okay, I finished. I don't know why it took me so long. Okay, why? Oh, I guess I have a little button on there for show because I forgot to do a buttonhole maybe. But this is by OGE Knitwear. It's done in baby cashmere merino, which had the name Debbie Bliss, and now it is Ella Ray Cashmere Merino Sport. This yarn is so nice and soft to knit with. Just has great stitch definition. It's just so nice to work with it. And it's what they call drapey. Yeah, I don't know why. I got this line there and I don't know why. Sometimes it's if you rip out and knit into the back loop, but I didn't. I ripped it out and got the same effect. Maybe I already washed it and blocked it, but I don't know. But it's still cute and I would do it again. I think it's a $7 pattern. And I didn't get out everything that I had. I got out some things. If you let something go on too long, then colors can get discontinued, or actually the yarn. when my husband picked this up, he said, "Oh, this is so soft." This is Ella Rae Cozy Alpaca in the, I think like a DK weight. They also have a chunky, and once you get this started, you're just on your own. You really don't need the pattern anymore. And you can pretty much make it as big as you want. And so I didn't have any trouble getting this back out. And the, I guess, only question is, ooh, I'm pulling out my stitches, is what colors, how thick I want to. A pattern can look boring if you make all the stripes the same size. So if I have, say, 6 there, I don't want to do 6 here. Just adds a little bit of interest. And they usually say that odd numbers are more pleasing to the eye. So instead of 2 rows of gray, use 1. I might end up doing some white. I don't know, but I'm working on it, and the yarn isn't plied. Let's see here. The yarn separates, yeah. But, let's see, yeah. But you get used to that. If you're knitting and the yarn does that, Prym needles are great. They have little scoops at the end, and they just scoop it in. I don't like to show a lot of whips. I know when I watch podcasts, I don't know, unless it's something really exciting, and I'm not really big into seeing people's whips. I wanted to try cables, and I did. And I can't really say I'm crazy about doing them. And then I had two different patterns. This is the cabled beanie by Mon Petite Violon. She has lovely crochet patterns for kids. This was a free pattern that I just decided to make a set, and then I have little booties. But yeah, I can't say that I was that crazy about it, the cabled effect. But this is done with worsted weight, Euro Yarns, Babe Soft Cotton worsted. And what else is not finished that I am going to get this finished? This was a pattern that is crocheted. It could almost pass for knitting, couldn't it? And I think it was called something like the 4-hour hat. And it looks like steps as you go up. And I was doing it with Burley Spun, I think, Prairie Fire yarn. Well, I think I might have sold the last skein, and I don't know that I have enough to finish it. So I might have to start over and stripe it, but I do want to finish it. I don't like the idea of letting things go, and I'm already ashamed that I had all these unfinished things. And let's see, one more thing. I don't want to knock the camera down, but now that the Ella Rae Cozy Soft Chunky has been discontinued, I had a leaflet. Oh, this probably goes back 2 years. And you actually create these holes. And I wasn't really too excited about having those holes everywhere. So I just put them there, and I think it should be bigger. It could be like a small stroller size blanket, but this is like on the top of my list to get this finished, and the other one. So I'm trying to be militant about being monogamous with 5 different lovers. So I'm going to talk a little bit about faith and knitting and crocheting. I have been discouraged about how do I say this? Okay, I'll give you an example. I had some yarn that had sparkles in it, and also this yellow yarn that I showed you. I thought, wouldn't that be cute if you made strands of that and put them together as hair on a little doll and put it together as like braids, chains and chains of this. And I had some black with these silver, and I'm picturing a doll with, you know, this thick black hair. And so I went to Ravelry and I did advanced search. I put in crochet. Now, I don't know what would happen if I put in knitting. I put in crochet, and I put in the weight of yarn range, and I chose a softy doll, not animal doll. And what came up disturbed me as a Christian. There were lots of baby Baphomet, which is baby Satan, Krampus, which is this ugly looking satanic thing at Christmas time, aliens, witches, dolls with names that were really a turnoff to me, and on and on and on. Skull dolls, Dr. We had a pandemic, like Dr. Pandemic, the Grim Reaper, devil dolls, dolls with horns. And when I would find, hi sweetie, when you would find somebody, thought, oh, now that's a cute doll, and look at their other projects, you saw skulls and skeletons and just more spirits. And I said to my husband, come look at this. We live in a world where you just can't find a cute little doll anymore for a little girl to carry around. And these are the toys that babies get. Aliens and snakes and all the dark side. Like, is anybody with me? Is anybody feeling this pain? Is anybody feeling it? What's happened to the creative mind is, instead of designing and creating things for the glory of God, our Creator, we're going to the other end. I'm disturbed. You know, whatever your hands find to do, do all for the glory of God. And one of the reasons I took a big lull in my podcast is that the podcast wasn't growing. You can't find it if you Google like knitting, crocheting podcast, but it's just not growing. And there has to be a reason. And one of the reasons, I think, is maybe I'm not really being myself. I can't separate my Christianity, and I don't want to, because I love the Lord with all my heart, and we are in the end times. And it's time to pray and get to know the heart of God and to know His Word and so forth. We have had a lot of friends that have died since the beginning of the year. We've had to say goodbye to Jean and this guy and that guy and his wife and this person. And none of these people were sick. And, you know, you want to enjoy life to the fullest, enjoy your friends, pray for your friends, pray for others. So if you're not of that mindset, you probably won't enjoy my podcast, but I'm going full steam ahead. If you know people that are looking for a Christian podcast. I mean, for a while, I thought maybe I was depressed because I would pull up podcasts and I wasn't enjoying them. And recently I pulled up a podcast of a woman I really like, and the yarn was Witchy This. The project was On the Dark Side, the name. The yarn had to do with death. And it's not me and it's not who I am. I like the bright side of life. And the Bible tells us whatever things are true and lovely and good and of good report and so forth, think of these things. And when everything points to death and decay and the grim reaper, and that's not what I think of creating and making beautiful things to be. So when somebody buys yarn, I'll write before I ship it, something beautiful is about to happen, because it is. And I hope something beautiful is about to happen. So with those thoughts, shine baby shine. That's my motto. Let your light shine before all men. Let people wonder what you're up to. And recommend me to your friends. And hopefully I'll be back much sooner. So God bless you all. Thank you for your time and watching me. Come back again. Bye-bye.